Hello, everybody, and welcome to Heartlight Vedic Astrology. In today's talk, I was going to discuss the new moon or Amavasya that's happening on 20th November 2025. This talk is from a Vedic astrology, a Jyotish perspective, so ancient Indian astrology that's more than 5,000 years old. And it seems like the theme for this moment is successful cooperation. So let's take a look. Note beforehand, the information presented here is for educational purposes only and should not be considered medical, financial, professional, or life advice of any kind. If you are in need, please contact an appropriate professional for support. And you might take a minute or two to read the rest of this disclaimer. So, some announcements and orientation, especially for those of you who are new. So, I've been announcing for a while that I'm offering a level 1 Vedic astrology course coming January 2026, and I've opened up a new section. So, for those of you who are interested, the course is 12 weeks long. It's on Wednesdays from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time or New York time, and it's on Zoom. So, if that's something that's interesting to you, you can email heartlightastro@yahoo.com for an application. The deadline to apply is January 7th. Space is limited. This is going to be a small group. I just wanted to get together a few, really dedicated individuals. For this type of endeavor, really. And you don't need any astrology experience if you're interested. So again, level 1 intro course. Also, auto dubbing is available in new languages on the channel, Dutch, Polish, and Korean, in addition to the other languages listed here. All of my teaching videos on the subject of Vedic astrology are my concepts playlist. They can be found there. Wherever you see a double asterisk on one of my talks, that means there's a teaching video on that subject if you'd like to learn more. Also, my playlist, or sorry, my channel is all about playlists. So especially if you like these sort of like moon phase, new moon, full moon videos, they're all in my Gochara transits playlist, but I have other playlists as well. And also, if you like to learn astrology by looking at famous birth charts, you can check out my video birth chart archive list 2025 video, excuse me, where I list all the famous charts I've analyzed on the channel and the videos you can find them in. So some of the latest videos I posted, in case you missed any, planetary transits or Gochara for November 2025, full moon or Purnima on 5th of November 2025, and then Bharani nakshatra, which is a lunar mansion. So if you're new to all this and want us to get started learning the Vedic astrology, I've listed some, foundational videos at the end of the slide that I would suggest, looking at first to, again, start learning astrology and, get more out of talks like this. Okay, so here is the chart for the new moon on November 20th, 2025. It's oriented to Eastern Standard or New York time, and the specific time here is 1:47 a.m., so in the morning. So I just want to give everybody a chance to look at, a blank chart without all my markings on it. Especially if you're a student, you might, again, you might go ahead and do your own analysis here and then check in and see what I come up with and see where we agree or disagree. It's always an interesting experience that way. Okay, so when we look at charts, or when I look at charts, I guess I should say, I just let my eye naturally kind of go over the chart and kind of see what it sees, like what really catches my eye. So especially in a chart like this, probably for most people, their eye is gonna go towards this what we call pravraja yoga in the third house. Let me back up first. So this is a North Indian style chart. That's what I use in my work. And so to orient you, the top diamond in the middle, that's what we call the ascendant rising sign first house, also known as the lagna in Sanskrit. So to get to the other houses, you count inclusively from the first house, counterclockwise or up and to the left. So the third house, again, counting inclusively from the first, so 1, 2, 3. The third house is where you have Sun, Moon, Mercury, and Mars together. So, this what we call pravraja yoga in Western astrology. It's similar to the concept of a stellium. Okay, so we have Sun, Moon, Mercury, and Mars. So what the pravraja does is it gives what we call a life focus, because again, there's so many planets there. There's so much energy there. That's what people really will focus on in their life typically. Okay. And the other thing is that the planets like Sun owns one house, Moon owns another house, Mercury owns two, and Mars owns two. It means that like half the chart, 6 out of 12 houses, energy is going to be drawn into the third house here. Okay, so the third house is really important. So the third house represents a lot of things. siblings, which also makes sense because Mars is there, and Mars is a planet representing siblings, all that. Although Mars being in the third house can give issues as well. Mercury's there, which means friends, and the third house can mean like friends who are close, like siblings. Third house also represents neighbors, neighborhood, local community. It also represents courage, and here we would see a lot of courage because we have the two sun planets, Sun and Mars, the two fire planets here, and they're also the two leadership planets. Okay. The other thing is that there's a Moon and Mercury there. Sorry, Moon and Mercury. Yeah, Moon and Mercury there. Those are the two mind planets. So Moon is the more the intuitive mind, the emotional mind. Mercury's more the analytical mind. So it looks like there's a lot of courage, like if this is a person, a lot of courage and focus on leading a community in terms of mental and emotional wellness, but also physical as well, because Mars is there. Mars represents physicality. So the other thing is that Sun, Moon, and Mercury, you can see they're all within 1 degree. They're all sitting on top of each other. So again, this is a leader of that sort, but Mars is there as well. Oh, that's what I was going to say. Sun, Moon, and Mercury are all in a nakshatra or lunar mansion. If you're not familiar, lunar mansions, there are about 27 of them. They all have different energies associated with them. And this particular nakshatra that these three are in is called Anuradha. Anuradha is symbolized by a victory gate, but with a flower. So it's kind of victory through kindness, through friendship, which again I've already mentioned already. The third house represents friends, and Mercury, the planet, represents friends as well. Um, the other thing is that so we have three planets, leadership planet, mind, emotional planets, of like creating this like social milieu that's very positive and beneficial, or social organizing, I would assume here. The other thing is Mars is there. Mars is in a different nakshatra. Mars is in a nakshatra called Jyeshta, which is symbolized by a talisman. So a talisman, again, is kind of a symbol of protection. It can be physical, which I would assume here because Mars is a physical planet, represents things like muscles and blood and actions and, literally physical things. Fighting can be as well. But also, what was I going to say? Oh, Jyeshta, the protection can also be like spiritual, which we may get because again we're talking about Moon and Mercury, the mind planets, mental, emotional, logical, but also Jupiter is very strong in the 11th house, right across from it. Jupiter is exalted in Cancer, where it sits. It's also the underline under it means it's retrograde, which in Vedic astrology means it's strength. So it's like a doubly strong Jupiter, and Jupiter represents things like balance, law, justice, uh, generosity, compassion, finance as well. And the 11th house represents income. And clubs, group society. So again, we're getting like a spiritual community, spiritual, groups. Also, I would say financial investments because Jupiter also represents finance, especially banks. And the 11th house represents gambling. So, it looks like there might be some literal like financial investment being had at this time or made at this time related to groups. Because again, Jupiter sitting in the um, house of groups and clubs and societies aspecting the third house of neighbor. So it's like a neighborhood group, neighborhood community, possibly a sibling community as well. Okay. So, and again, a lot of energy moving this third house direction. So that's the focus there. The other thing about this pravraja yoga is that, we usually look for a dominant planet, which again tends to influence the other planets in the pravraja. So I would say, even though Mars is in its own house, it's Swa, we would call it, because Mars is, all these planets are in Scorpio, and Scorpio is ruled by Mars, and so Mars is a very strong planet. The thing though is that Mars is combust here. Actually, all these planets except Sun are combust. So Moon is new, which means combust. Mercury's combust. Mars is combust. So Moon, Mercury, and Mars, you can't see the external manifestations of them in the sky. If you look up in the sky and look for Moon, Mercury, and Mars, you can't see them. So what that means in our day-to-day lives is that you won't see the external manifestations of these things. So this may mean like Moon, you may not be, again, if this is a transit chart, seeing your mother at this time, because Moon represents mother. Also, Moon represents public. Okay. So that's still involved here, but again, in more of like an internal. So it looks like the leadership here of community organizing is more of like again, social milieu. Like it's more the atmosphere of being friendly neighbor. It's like you could see it that way. Okay. So Moon is combust, Mercury's combust. So that means that, things mercurial are going to be unseen. So Mercury represents things like friends. So again, friends you can't see, like maybe even like an online community. But also Mercury represents things like business. So this might be like a business that, again, like this could be a social networking, that kind of thing. Because third house also represents non-oral communication. Okay, and Mercury's there and Jupiter's aspecting there. Mercury represents writing, Jupiter represents publishing. So this could be like writing like on social media an announcement about something, about the community community organizer is writing. So and then Mars is the combust. And so Mars being combust, again, Mars represents siblings. So this may be, if there may be a sibling here, because there are all these planets in the house of siblings. At least I would say probably two, since Sun is visible and Mars is not visible, but it's still swa. So it looks like there was, if this is a person, they probably had a number of siblings. At least two, maybe three or more. Because Jupiter represents, if we split hairs here, Jupiter represents older siblings, Mars represents younger siblings, and Jupiter's in the 11th house of older siblings. So it looks like at least there's one older sibling, and then younger siblings, there may be one, two, or more. But since we have a couple planets here, Moon and Mercury, which are combusts, are not particularly strong, there might have been siblings that have passed on. But it looks like there might be a younger sibling who's very strong, but maybe not around very much. And also, Mars in the third house, we call it karako, bhava, nashya, which means, again, the planet representing siblings is in the house representing siblings. So there can be problems here, but those will be problems that you don't necessarily see. Okay. And it doesn't have to be with the sibling, it could just be the sibling themselves has some sort of issue, maybe medical or financial or that sort of thing. Okay. The other thing is that Mars is, well, maybe I should wait till the next slide. I think it's on the next slide. I will wait because I have a whole slide on Mars. But anyway, there's a lot that's going on with Mars. But I would still say, and so you might think that Mars is the dominant planet in the stellium or pravraja yoga, but I would actually say the Sun is more dominant because the Sun is the only planet you can see in this mix. So maybe internally, Mars is, more um, prevalent or influential. And Mars, again, is like, since they're the two leadership planets, Mars is more the like hands-on in the trenches CEO type, roll your sleeves up and get involved with details and all that kind of thing. And Sun is more the president or, king, that sort of thing. So more of a symbolic leader who's more likely to delegate. So on the surface, it looks like, there is some obvious outward leadership here. Somebody who does get into the nitty-gritty details, maybe behind the scenes though, because it may not seem, and we'll get into this. It seems like this is like something about leading an organization besides leading a community. The organization is about leading the community, and so there's some key figure here who's in charge, who's sort of symbolic for the whole enterprise. And but it looks like there's a lot going on in terms of behind the scenes are involved in a lot of different details. Okay. So since Sun is the only planet you can see here, I would say this is Sun-dominated pravraja yoga. So we're going to see outwardly more of the effects of like some sort of, symbolic leader. But underneath the surface or behind the scenes, there's going to be a lot of, uh, you know, uh, mental and emotional energy being placed into this enterprise and endeavor. Okay. Um, So we talked about the retrograde Mercury, Mercury's retrograde as well. You see that line under Mercury. That means that somebody is potentially, reviewing things, revising things, hammering things out, which again, I've already mentioned because there's so much energy. The Sun and Mars, again, two fire planets. But then you've got Jupiter as well, and Jupiter's like, they call it an expansion planet. And you get Jupiter a very strong Jupiter, doubly strong Jupiter like this, it's going to bring some grace to all this that's going on. But there's also going to be a lot of activity, a lot of enthusiasm. Just Mars and Jupiter together brings enthusiasm. The other thing is that this can bring something like contracts, because Jupiter and Mars together represents law. But since we're in the third house of nonverbal communication, this could be some sort of contract. Okay. Yeah, the other thing is that since Sun is the, at least outwardly dominant planet here, the Sun represents health and it can represent things like doctors. And Sun is in, this Anuradha energy. So this might be sort of a community, local community doctor type, healer type, leader type, or at least somebody who's there who's, helping to make things better and smooth things over and improve things, whether it's literally medical or not. Okay. The other thing this could be, if it's not that, like specifically medical, what I could see from this could be something like a union. Okay. The reason why I'm saying union is that we have natural malefics on the third house. The third house, besides representing siblings, neighbors, courage, community, um, nonverbal communication, the third house represents literally things you do with your hand, like crafts, raids, that sort of thing. Okay. So typically when you have natural malefics on the third house and the first house, which we do, because Saturn is aspecting the first house, that can indicate somebody who's a very literally hands-on. Like already I was saying this is going to be a hands-on person, and leader, but they're also literally going to be a hand, like they use their hands a lot doing something. Okay. And again, there's some sort of transformational issue because we're in Scorpio here, but this is some sort of, use of hands that again, you can't necessarily see all the, obvious changes of. Okay. So this could also be, again, like I said, like a union leader. Because again, you're getting communities together, money's involved here. You've got this strong Jupiter in the 11th house. Also, Mars is the lord of the 8th house, which is not only deep psychology. So this might be helping to protect from 8th house issues. 8th house issues are long, deep, problems like bankruptcy and death and chronic illness and that sort of thing. The other thing is the 8th house represents other people's money. Okay, so there's some money involved here as well. But again, courage is here. We've got the two fire planets, building an alliance. We have 3 planets in Anuradha, that friendly alliance energy, successful alliance energy. Elder sibling Jesta can represent elders. So this can be literally like an older sibling, although again, we mentioned Mars is usually like a um, younger sibling, but it could be both. Um, Neighbors and friends. So this might be some sort of like not just like a leader, but a leader of leaders. Like somebody that, against somebody that even other leaders look up to. But again, I would say some sort of master craftsman, like literally with their hands. The other thing is that the reason why malefics in the third house and on the first house, is important is because a lot of time with trades, because they're so physical in nature and they use things like chemicals and appliances and tools and all this, it can cause physical problems, through smelling chemicals or vapors or physically utilizing your hands or whatever body parts over and over and over again. Um, in a long term, there might be some sort of like arthritis that keeps up. And here I would say that this is somebody who's probably, if this was a person's chart, probably prone to something like arthritis besides the third house. Okay, the third house also represents the arts. So again, that's a craftsman type energy, writing, law. This could also be somebody like having people write a petition or sign a petition. Because again, that's another non-physical, non-verbal way of organizing all these groups that we're seeing in this chart. Okay. Or contract, I said. The other thing is that this could be related to hearing on different levels, like Mars represents machines, Mercury represents hearing and ears, and the third house represents, the right ear. So this could be something like a hearing aid or Bluetooth, maybe music that you can't see. So maybe like, again, like ear pods or like, this could be somebody who leads like again, if you're thinking like mind, body, emotional energy here, some leader of that type. Maybe it's like it could even be like a DJ type. But again, I'm seeing more of a physical type of person here. This could be a podcast, that somebody's putting out. Some sort of like digital recording could be, because Mercury and Mars together is computers. So I'm thinking of like some sort of machine, small machine you can't see, like an ear pod or an hearing aid or something like that. Um, this could also be, since we have Mercury and Jupiter together here, again, that can't be nude, so this could be some kind of writing, like a social media post. It could also be like an educator type energy here. So maybe this is somebody who organizes groups into mind body type groups, like a yoga teacher, like yoga meditation teacher, that sort of thing. Okay. So anyway, that's just what we're seeing so far. Where else did my eye go? What else did I see? So here, okay, so now I get in more into Mars. I mentioned Mars a little bit already. Again, we've got that karako, bhava, nashya, Mars, so that's going to bring trouble to siblings. Okay, Mars in the third house. And it's also bhavat, bhavam. So Mars is the ruler of the eighth house, and the eighth house lord has gone 8 houses away. So there's going to be one long-term, multiple long-term issues going on here with potentially the sibling, since the sibling is karka, since Mars is karka, bhava, nashya. But this can also be that, like, again, handling one long-term problem after another related to community, groups, friends, neighbors, all that. Yeah. The other thing is that Mars, you can see, is aspecting 4 houses away into the 6th house of enemies, and Mars represents enemies. And Rahu is there. Rahu's the north node of the moon, and it symbolizes ambition, but also hidden, unusual things. And it's in a nakshatra called Purva Bhadrapada, which is symbolized by the front legs of a funeral pyre. So this could literally be putting fires out. I mean, of all kinds, like mental, emotional, just someone who's constantly thinking about problems and dealing with problems for not just themselves. I mean, this represents themselves, but for other people as well. Like it's just like I'm just seeing like this nonstop energy here. Okay, so there's and then the let's see. So there's issues with older siblings that are underseen. Also, like hidden thoughts, ambitious, aggressive enemies, protection from losses. That's what I'm seeing here with this Mars in its own sign in the third house. But this could also be erratic groups as well, because Mars is debilitated. It's also, oh, I need to fix that. Mars is aspecting besides the 6th house of enemies, it's aspecting all those planets, Sun, Moon, Mercury, Mars, and Saturn. 5 planets are aspecting the 9th house of authority and government and enterprise. So again, it looks like something related to something structural, maybe athletics, because Mars and Saturn together will give athletics. Mars and Saturn together will give manufacturing. Mars and Saturn both represent land and property. Mars and Saturn represent like, again, brick and mortar type, businesses, that sort of thing. So yeah, and then Mars also is aspecting the 10th house of 9 to 5 work and also reputation. So the day-to-day work of this person is to, again, it looks like in their own quiet, hidden way, protect the community here, and fix all these problems. And even though they may be seen as like the presidents, sort of like their face, when you see their face, you're like, oh yeah, that's the head of blah blah blah. Some heads, like, they have no idea what's going on in their organization. They just delegate everything and leave it all to other people. This is someone who's going to be on top of every detail in the organization. Okay. This could be, so there's some erratic groups here as well. Potentially, well, actually, no, I have to change the arrow. I put the arrow in the wrong place, so now I can scratch that, forget what I said. But there's going to be some kind of, again, roll your sleeves up and kind of managerial work in 9 to 5 for this person. This could be personal injury law, because the Saturn in the 7th house here, I mean, I'll get into it more, but The Saturn is Sunday, it's in the first degree, that means it's unstable. Saturn represents things like chronic disease, structural issues, medically, neuromuscular problems, pain, skepticism, doubt, fear, mentally, emotionally, you know, especially that's what Saturn represents. It's in the funeral pyre energy like Rahu. So we're going to have some changes and endings here. It's also retrograde, so it's exaggerated. And it's in the seventh house representing like spouse like partner, business partners, independent business and way forward in life. So there's some, probably literally structural problems moving forward and delays and obstacles. And, luckily, the thing about it, luckily Saturn and Rahu, in the next week after this, Rahu is moving out of that Purva Bhadrapada funeral pyre energy into Shatabisha, which represents like, literally translates as 100 healers. That's still problematic because Rahu and Shatabisha will bring unusual illnesses and things like that, especially with Mars aspecting at sixth house. Sixth house can be acute medical issues, and Mars and Rahu together can bring things like strange infections, like viral infections and things like that. Or it could be like strange accidents and injuries, because Mars can represent that. So it looks like there's some physical uh, changes and delays going on here. And so this Jupiter and Mars together in the third house, this could be like a personal injury lawyer, workman's compensation type of issue, because again, we keep getting money and land and physicality, like of property, of land, of buildings, but also of the self. Like Mars is muscle, and again, Saturn is connective tissue, and can be skin and that sort of thing. Also, this Mars is aspecting, all these planets, five of them are aspecting the ninth house of authority, so there's going to be problems there. Again, challenges physically, mentally, emotionally, probably property. Mars, since it's there and you can't see it, there might also be chemical issues related to this, delays or obstacles, illness that's going on here. This could be a class action suit, like, again, on the last slide we talked about unions, like maybe this is a union group who's saying like work conditions are subpar and the work conditions are making us sick and, this needs to change, and that's what's, on the docket there. It's Mars in its own sign too. Mars can represent competition and disputes and arguments, so it looks like there's plenty of that going on as well. Okay, so on this slide, I'm just pointing out more stuff that I've noticed. So I just talked about Mars, and Mars again is important because it's the ruler of the eighth house of other people's money. But look, you've got Venus Swan, the second house of assets, and you have Jupiter exalted and retrograding, the 11th house of income. All three main money houses are very, very strong in this chart. The only thing I would say though is that like for example, Mars, the ruler of the eighth house has gone 8 away. That means that there's going to be potentially chronic issues, underlying issues with land and property. Okay. There's some protection of and from, but there's still issues here. The other thing is that Jupiter, let's see, is 8 houses away from the fourth house here of happiness. So there can be problems. Again, Jupiter's Sunday, it's not stable, like Saturn's not stable. And again, Jupiter is aspecting Saturn from where it sits. So that's nice that it'll put some, buffer of, kind of cushion the blow, let's say, of what Saturn potentially can bring here, because Saturn can bring a lot of destruction potentially. Since it's unstable, it's Sunday in the first degree of the sign, and it's in that Purva Bhadrapada energy. But yeah, I mean, Jupiter is also super strong in the 11th house. So we have the Swa Venus. Venus in its own sign in Vrischika. Vrischika is a victory nakshatra. A little bit more like a victory at all costs, more than victory, by forming alliances. But it's in the second house here of inner circle, family, assets, savings. And the thing is, Venus is the lord of the ninth house here of, again, enterprise, government, authority. So again, there's some there's a lot of money on the table regarding whatever this is, like whether it's a union contract negotiation or, and it looks like there was some agreement that was made here, that's going to be mostly beneficial to groups and things like that. The thing that was that there's going to be some, again, very diplomatic speech here going on because Venus is the planet of social grace and diplomacy and finer things of life. So with Venus Swa in its own sign in the second house, this is somebody who speaks very well, eloquently, has sweet speech. The other thing is that they look pretty nice, okay? Because the second house represents like from the neck up, so they probably are an attractive looking person. But in terms of money, Venus there is going to represent finance and gains through relationships, which again, we're already seeing like big community organizer in this chart. And then Jupiter exalted, retrograding 11th house. That's going to be a lot of income coming in from what? From the fourth house of home and lineage, and also the seventh house of independent business. So again, there's a lot of money going on here. Yeah, and again, the exalted Jupiter in the 11th house, income groups, employees, the 11th house is that, older siblings, wisdom, diplomacy, partnerships, could be spirituality as well. The Swan Mars, that's Lord of the 8th house here. The 8th house also represents scandals, okay? This could be potentially like a legal settlement between people, like before things really got nasty, or you can see from the Saturn in the 7th house here, like things are starting to really break down with partnerships and stuff like that. So in the next week, Saturn is not going to move out of the Purva Bhadrapada energy like Rahu, but Saturn's going to start going progressive. So that means whatever squeeze or push Saturn is giving here, anxiety provoking thing that Saturn's giving here, the energy is going to shift, tides are going to turn, next week or so for both of these natural malefics that are in that funeral pyre drop energy. So, it's like, exhale, things slowly start to move in a better direction. But, yeah, again, this might be hidden scandals also related to other people's money. That's a possibility as well. But again, it's one of the first things I noticed was how strong the money is in this chart. So. And then the other thing I noticed is that you've got 6 out of 9 classic Jyotish planets in negative houses. So that's a Balarishta yoga. That can indicate, like, if this is a person, probably had a very difficult childhood, um, medically, emotionally, physically, financially, any which way. Um, sometimes the Balarishta yoga is so strong or virulent that, kids may not survive childhood or may only live into like their 20s. They end up, dying fairly young. Um, so that's on board. So there's definitely some drawbacks to this chart. The other thing is Saturn is the only planet in the Kendras in the 4 houses in the middle. And it's again Sunday, it's unstable, it's retrograde, it's exaggerated even though it's strong. And it's in this Purva Bhadrapada energy, funeral pyre energy, and Saturn is what Saturn is. It represents things like delays and obstacles and deaths, can be. So since Saturn is in the 7th house, there's going to be delays and obstacles with spouse, partnerships, independent business, way forward in life. It's aspecting the 1st house. The 1st house represents the self, physically, personality, psychology. So there's a maturation problem, maturation going on both of on this, 1-7 axis here. Saturn is also aspecting the 4th house of home, property, mother, happiness, education. So the Saturn is like, again, all Virgo rising folks, are kind of basically going through this as a transit chart right now. Really feeling the squeeze, a lot of energy, 3rd house matters. Yeah, so besides Saturn, causing problems and the Balarishta yoga, The other thing is you have Rahu and Ketu on the 6-12 axis here. Sixth house is acute issues, 12th house is losses and expenditures, and Rahu and Ketu both represent hidden, unusual, unexpected things. So there's a lot of hidden, unexpected events going on that, again, somebody looks like they're chronically, obsessively trying to figure out and deal with. Um, but it looks like, again, with all this going on, like they might be feeling like they're sort of at a breaking point. But luckily, again, Saturn and Rahu are moving into, they are what they are as planets, but they're moving into better energies slowly but surely over the next week. So that's, hopeful. Yeah, let me see. And the other thing that's good, so despite clearly there are issues in this chart, we have that Mars, bhavat, bhavam, karako, bhava, nashya, Mars. That's not great. Saturn's in the kendras, unstable, retrograde in this Purva drop energy, Rahu Ketu on the 6-12 axis. There is a saving grace here, and I would say this Jupiter. It's so strong, it's exalted and retrograde in the 11th house, and it's aspecting Saturn, and Saturn is in a sign or a constellation ruled by Jupiter. So Saturn is going to be dominated by this massive Jupiter. And again, Jupiter represents diplomacy, charity, kindness, um, spirituality. Especially, I mentioned when I see Jupiter in or aspecting Pisces, I often see like somebody who's interested in, deep into Christianity. So this might be some sort of Christian belief or background or community or church community that's helping to support and lift up the Saturn and all the kind of trouble Saturn is bringing here. So there is some grace here to what's going on. And luckily Saturn is here and will be on Saturn and influencing Saturn till the first week of December. So we've got a couple more weeks where Jupiter's helping to lift up the Saturn and all it can potentially bring in terms of not so fun stuff. Okay, so that's a basic overview. So what I was going to do now is go through in greater detail, house by house, for those who are interested in that. And then after that, I was going to go into the amshas or subdivisional charts for even more detail. Yeah, so let's get into that. Hold on a second. Okay, so here we go, house by house. So now this chart's the same chart. I've just got all the markings on it all, simultaneously, which makes it kind of intense, but complete, I guess. So the Lagna nakshatra, we talked about it, the planet nakshatras, but the Lagna nakshatra is Uttara Phalguni, which is enjoyment, similar as a hammock or a marital bed. So this is enjoyment, but with a purpose. So the other thing is that the Lagnatia here, the ruling planet for the chart, is Mercury. And Mercury's gone to the third house, which is a Kamasthana, a house of enjoyment. So this is somebody who enjoys their life. But again, there's clearly some goals and activities, going on here. Then I mentioned Sun, Moon, both in Anuradha, leading public success alliance, third house, community, probably local. I wanted to say local here. That may not be too far off in some cases. So the day lord is Mercury. So we're picking up the first house energy of self and the 10th house energy of day-to-day work and reputation, and also the 3-9 axis here, so community and enterprise. Okay, and then the our lord is Mars. So Mars, again, protection, I would say, essentially physical protection. Then the dasha lord is the dasha period. So the dasha period is a planetary period. And these are planets that'll be at a specific time or more active or influential you can think of. So we've got Saturn, Ketu, Venus. Well, already I mentioned Saturn and Ketu are causing problems, okay, in this chart, just because of what they are and where they are. But then we have this Venus, Swa, in the second house, which is a direct contrast, okay? So there's some sort of sweet speech, regarding restructuring losses and things like that going on here, okay? Again, stepping forward and being the face of an enterprise to shift the dynamics here. for this again, community organization. Now, Saturn, KT Venus is switching to Saturn, Venus, 16th of January, 2026. So we're going to lose some of these like unexpected events. And this might be, for an organization, this might be something related to like COVID, potentially, or something like COVID, like these unexpected hidden events that like came out of the blue and you're like, what is this? I don't even know what this is. And it totally disrupted things. Because again, there are some hidden, unexpected disruptions here during the Saturn, KT Venus period. And now we're sort of still in the Saturn rebuilding, restructuring mode, but with Venus. So again, we're bringing more of this like positive, worldly advisor and sweet speech and victory type energy, and and maybe like success and advising to contain some unusual chaotic events that have happened. Okay. So sometimes I mentioned kind of in a greater social calendar context, like things that may be going on. So there is a festival, I believe it's a Shinto festival or holiday called Nina Masai. Nina Masai. Nina Masai, sorry. So yeah, and so apparently in the Shinto tradition, this is a day which is very close to this 20th November, where there's thanksgiving to deities for the harvest. Okay, so there's some like ending of a cycle. There's also some gratitude here. And you can tell there's a lot of victory in this chart. I mean, despite all the challenges, there are definitely challenges here as well. But you've got a lot of good energy coming from Venus, Swa in its own sign, a positive house, and Jupiter retrograde exalted in a positive house. The other thing is that it may seem bad that Sun, Moon, Mercury, and Mars are all here together because you're drawing all this energy in. But the thing is, Sun and Mars are pure temporal malefics. Sun is pure temporal malefic because it owns a negative house, the 12th house. And Mars is a pure temporal malefic because it owns the 6th and the 8th. So when you have a pure temporal malefic, you actually want to keep it in a negative house. If you have a pure temporal malefic in a positive house, you're going to bring all this negative energy into the positive house. So instead, it's like the negative potential energies that Sun and Mars can bring, it's like siphoning that off in this chart, which is great. So that's the thing is, this is a big deal, like, thanking deities for harvest. I mean, there's a lot of things that can go wrong. From, having a seed to planting the seed to water, sunshine levels, and all the soil and nutritionals, to go from potentially planting in the spring to actually having like a potato or zucchini or tomato in your hand by the time fall rolls around. It's like, wow, there was enough positive things that happened, and a lot of times with harvesting, that's like a group activity, especially a harvest festival, where it's like, hey, we worked together and we made things happen, and it's been, um, helpful, and let's celebrate together and that sort of thing. And so you do see that kind of energy in this chart. But again, it's not without issue for sure. So then the Lugna, let's just go through a little more formally. So Virgo, rising here, Kanya in Sanskrit, dual earth sign. So that's the thing, is there's probably at least two different things going on here. So not just one issue, but two. And as if there isn't enough energy on the 3-9 axis. Like, I was just like, wow. So this person's doing double duty, like if it is a person. So managing things maybe at home and at work, or managing two different jobs or two different projects or two different properties. Like, so you just multiply everything in the chart by two, essentially. Okay. So dual earth sign, and it's something physical though. And again, we keep getting physical, energy in this chart. Dusva Baba Prithvi. Okay, so then it's aspected by the Sunday retrograde Saturn Purva. So again, this is going to bring difficulties, delays, skepticism, doubt, fear. Okay, so even though there's courage, there's clearly still issues as well. overcoming dual physical, emotional restructuring, maturation. This could be somebody literally like losing weight or aging, like when they're stressed. That could be this kind of energy, this kind of Saturn on the first house. Um, straining relationships, straining things at home, you know, all the stuff going on. Again, this looks like some sort of like, local hero person who just is nonstop on the go, trying to put out literal and figurative fires and, you know, doesn't have a moment to breathe or think, So, this could also be bilateral intermittent pain. This is a Saturn. So I'm getting into Ayurveda now, traditional Indian medicine, because Saturn represents a lot of vata or intermittent kind of symptoms and pain and windy symptoms like arthritis, like sciatica, like fear, anxiety, loneliness, overwhelm, feelings of overwhelm, like constipation, like dry skin, like yeah, that sort of thing. And again, it's aspecting the lugna here, so the self of the person, physically and mentally, emotionally. Um, but also we have a dual earth sign, which is also very vata. So this is somebody who's going to be very, very vata, always on the move, scattered, finger in every pie, in the middle of every activity. So even though symbolically they're president, it looks like this person isn't really good at delegating, so they're involved in everything, and it's going to wear them down over time. I think that's the issue, and that's the thing is with this Balarishta yoga and the Saturn, and even though there's some agreement that's been positive and helpful and all this kind of stuff, this person looks like they're at a breaking point. So, and again, luckily Saturn and Rahu are moving in the next week into better energy, but Saturn is going to be in Pisces for until February of 2008, 28. So, a little over 2 years, we still got the Saturn on all of our Virgo rising people and on their relationships and on their home and on their ninth house of authority, father, government, enterprise. Yeah, get the picture. Yeah. Okay. So this since it's a dual sign, though, the Saturn could be bringing intermittent pain on both sides. Like the seventh house here can be hips, so maybe like both hips, both legs, or the first house represents the head, like maybe both sides of the head, or skull, that sort of thing. Um, but again, there's enjoyment and purpose here. Again, this person also might be getting lean, but maybe not in like the best possible way. Like maybe this might be like not eating well, stressed out too much, not eating well. It could be discipline, but if it's discipline, it's kind of like extreme discipline because this is an extreme person, you know. So um, again, maybe bringing together two different groups that have fractured previously. This could be literally a physical fracture. Um, Also healing neuromuscular issues or again some split, like maybe not a full fracture, but maybe like a tendon tear or rupture, that sort of thing. But again, this kind of Saturn, it can represent like arthritis, so neuromuscular problems. So then the Lugnesh, again, this combust Mercury and Anuradha, retrograde as well, with the new moon, sun, Swa, all in Anuradha, combust, bhavat, bhavam, Mars, and Jesta, aspect by an exalted Jupiter, blah, 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 in third house. Okay, Kamastan enjoyment. So leading deep internal mind body transformation. This could be creative education of groups and work and reputation. So again, this could be, again, like a yoga instructor, some sort of like mind body healer type person like this. The thing is, it looks like they're running themselves ragged, uh, maintaining this or getting this, dealing with the current issues going on. If this is a person's chart, this is going to be a chronic workaholic type person. Yeah. If this is a transit chart, this is going to be a very tough moment where, like, you feel like you might kind of lose it. You know. Yeah, so let's see. So other yogas here, we talked about the pravraja, the life focus on the third house. We have the balarishta, fragile beginnings, childhood. We also have a chandra-mangala yoga. So again, that gets back to wealth and property. So more wealth. We also have a budhaditya yoga, that's intelligence, sun and Mercury together. And then solar lunar yogas, which should be positively supported by this Swa Venus. That's going to bring wealth and renown and health and that sort of thing, positive things. We also have a kahala yoga, so that's going to bring like leader energies. So again, this looks like, again, if it's a person, someone who's kind of obsessed with like community organizing and stuff, but again, almost to their own detriment, I would say. They're going to wear themselves down. And then potentially a Lakshmi yoga, um, because Venus is Swa in a positive house, and it's the owner of the ninth house. And when we have a very strong ninth house lord and Venus, but it happens to be the same, this could again, I just kept seeing like money, money, money. First, second house, eighth house, 11th house, chandra-mangala yoga, potential Lakshmi yoga. There's a lot of money involved in this. So it's not just like people, but it's assets, resources, income. It's all on the literal or figurative table here. Um, So yeah, so it's gonna be this all these yogas. It's gonna bring focus, but fragility, property, money, intelligence, leadership, renown, popularity, wealth, or health, wealth, both sweetness, sweet disposition. So again, this looks like a local hero type. Then we have chidra grahas. These are plants of vulnerability. So this is interesting. So Venus, which is again inner circle, family, assets, and enterprise here, and relationships. Mars twice over. So all this like protection stuff that's going on here, this is like a almost like a rescuer energy, rescue complex type person, it looks like. And then Mercury as well. So decisions regarding protecting self, and then Mars and Mercury are both related to, the 10th house of 9 to 5 work. So that's this person's job, all this rescuing and stuff. So, and the Chidragrahas are planets of vulnerability or kind of sensitive spots. So relationships are going to be a problem, which clearly this is a relationship person. And then siblings, because Mars, we talked about Mars a bunch. And then family, that's the second house. Work is a 10th house. And again, arthritis, uh, because of the Mercury and Mars, that can also indicate like neuromuscular pain, besides the Saturn representing structural issues and stuff like that. Um, then we have planets related to money. So, the yogi, which represents wealth, planet of wealth is Moon. So, feeling, intuition, imagination, public, that's going to bring wealth, which again, it looks like there's a lot of money on the table here. And then Aviyogi and duplicate yogi is Mercury. So, logic, analysis, decision. This is going to bring mixed results because Aviyogi is lack of wealth and duplicate yogi is brings wealth, and Mercury's both, and Mercury is a dual planet. So some decisions are going to be work well, some decisions not going to work well. Feeling things out and using the intuition, imagination is probably the better way to go for this kind of person. Then the second house Lord again, Swa, very strong, Venus and Vrischika. Strong family, inner circle, assets, finance, savings, sweet speech, counselor, good looking. I mean, a lot of nice stuff there in the second house. Third house is the Lord, again, the Swa, Combus, Mars, and Jesa with Sun, Moon, Mercury, and Anuradha aspected by Jupiter. So protective, older sibling, friends that aren't seen much, maybe, or more kind of figurative neighbor, community leader, successful alliance mentally, physically, emotionally, multiple long-term issues, writing and publishing like a newsletter, something like that. Dexterity, that's that craftsmanship, ability to use your hands. Um, reconsidering things though. So again, this might be contracts, kind of stuff, craftsman. But again, it looks like this will take a toll on somebody's health. And again, specifically their hands and arms sort of thing. Because again, they're clearly using their hands and their arms so much. that may take a toll, especially also because it's still better that Sun and Mars, because they're both pure temporal malefics, are in a third house, but they're both in the same house. Um, so that can bring injuries and inflammation and pain to like arms, shoulders, hands, fingers, that sort of thing. All right, so the other house on this slide, the fourth house, everything on the left is the same, so my notes are on the right here. Fourth house lord is an exalted retrograde Jupiter. In Punarvasu, Punarvasu is symbolized by a quiver of arrows. So that's like cycling, like going out, coming back, cycling, that sort of thing. And then aspected by retrograde Sun, Saturn, and Purva Bhadrapada, all that destruction stuff going on. So restructuring home, land. This might be moving, if not destruction, like final destruction. This could be like, changing homes or, changing property. Also, I would say cycling and problems with happiness, mom, healing, maybe education. Um, since this person has a swa Venus for their ninth house, um, there is probably some higher level education. And Jupiter's also strong. So the lords of the fourth house of, sort of college education and ninth house of higher education, master's or PhD are strong. But the thing is, Saturn is on both of them. So there were probably degrees, but with some difficulty they were obtained. Like undergraduate, it looks like probably some sort of like biology or pathology that was studied. And also like maybe evolution. I think those are potential degrees that somebody like this would get. The fifth house lord is Saturn, which we've talked about is challenging, aspected by a debilitated Jupiter. So I would say that there's probably some issues with kids here, physical issues, maybe specifically with the arm. Also, the fifth house indicates romance. So I would say there's probably some, again, problems with relationships, spouse-like partner, or other sort of sweetheart who's in the picture. There may be physical distance, but it might be amicable because this Jupiter is on Saturn. Saturn's in a sign of Jupiter, and Jupiter's, even though it's debilitated, on the fifth house. So it might be amicable if there's some problems going on, structural problems or delays or obstacles involved. The sixth house lord is Saturn. Rahu's there in Purva Bhadrapada, aspected by Mars. Infections, accidents, excessive, like this is an obsessive daily routine. Mars and Rahu together can bring impulsive, compulsive, this again, workaholic type, never stopping type energy, hidden unexpected problems, ambitious energies, affecting partnerships and the way forward. There's some protection of inanimate things, but this is again nonstop putting out fires and handling problems. The seventh house lord is an exalted Jupiter. Saturn's there, ending structural changes to partners, independent business, path forward, some kind of like older or a partner, you know, temporarily or long term challenges. But there's like endurance here, also spiritualizing because Jupiter's aspecting here. Again, maybe the partner specifically is a devout Christian, but they also are having problems with children because from the seventh house, the fifth house from the seventh is that Jupiter retrograde exalted, which sounds really great. But the thing is, when you have Jupiter in the fifth house, it's kind of like Mars in the third house. You get a karako, bhava, and nashya, so that'll bring problems to children of some kind. So, trouble with kids, maturation. So again, like both the natal person, the native of the chart, and their partners, are going through the same kind of endurance, maturation, worries, skepticism, doubt. Like, it's a shaky time for Virgo rising and their partnerships, personal and professional, and probably both since it's a dual sign. In the eighth house lord is Swa Mars, aspected by Swa Venus. So successful in creating creative solutions, it's just like they don't stop. And and they're doing double duty. So then the ninth house lord is Venus, aspected by Sun, Moon, Mercury, Mars, Saturn, almost every planet. So this is like family, faith, faith in the family, promoting the enterprise, being the face of the organization. I mentioned money, money, money. President, basically a hidden CEO, an alliance builder, silent protector, and builds goodwill and vibes for everybody. That's the thing is that's a lot to carry. That's a lot to carry. Um, especially, and I'll talk about that more of like, identifying so much in your role, it's like you lose yourself in it and injure yourself, hurt yourself, which is the possibility in this kind of chart. 10th house lord is Mercury, and you've got this aspected by Mars, so work, is the same as everything I've talked about. But the 7th house is stronger, so it's probably going to be more of an entrepreneur. And then the 11th house here, the Lord is Moon, Jupiter, the strong Jupiter's there, strong community, income, investments. 12th house, Lord is Sun. Ketu's there in Purva Phalguni. This is unusual losses to happiness, maybe lifestyle, no time to relax, insomnia. This energy is like the world is on your shoulders, which again is not surprising at this point, but it's just reiterating what's in the rest of the chart here. This can also be something like, I put drugs here. It doesn't have to be drugs, so to speak, like drinking or smoking or whatever, but some way of checking out. You know what I mean? But it's almost like this person with Ketu there, because 12th house is also places of isolation. It's like this person's never on their own. It's like they never get a break from all this community organizing. Like they're just surrounded by people and their problems nonstop. So again, this may be somebody, especially in this moment, because the dasha period is Saturn and Ketu, between the chronic problems of Saturn and then the unusual problems of Ketu. This might be somebody who feels like they're at the breaking point, even though they can handle a lot. But also, I think it brings up the question of like, maybe it's successful, like for the community, but at what cost? Because clearly this person's basically, I mean, it's there's going to be a cost to them and their health and their mental and emotional and physical well-being, the way that they're doing things, overdoing things, you know. So yeah, you know, uh, positive alliance for the community, but at what cost to the leader of this organization? I think that's the question. So now I was going to get into the amshas. Okay, so here we've got the subzodiac, amsha, subdivisional charts, all different names for the same thing. So these charts are derived by slicing and dicing up the main chart into smaller and smaller pieces. And this gives you more detail about the different houses, what's going on. But these are mostly used for timing. So at the top here of these subzodiac slides, I've remind us of the dasha period. So Saturn, Ketu, Venus at the time of this chart. And then that shifts to Saturn, Venus, middle of January 16th, 2026. So those planets that are in the dasha period are what I've circled. So essentially, as a first pass analysis, what we're looking for is, are these planets well placed in terms of, are they going to give more positive results or negative results when they're running? So on this side, we have two charts, the Navamsha D9 for spouse and partnerships, which we said was, challenged in the main chart. Also the Drake and a D3 for siblings, which is going to be very important. So, because there's all that pravraja yoga in that, right? 4 planets in the third house. So let's take a look. So with the D9 at the top, Saturn and Venus are not well placed, which that's going to tell us, and since they're the main planetary periods here, there's challenges here to spouse and partnerships, which shouldn't be surprising. Okay, and Saturn's with an exalted Jupiter, so there's going to be, again, spirituality and grace related to problems, self, losses. Venus is with Rahu in the third house, so there's going to be unusual changes and endings to relationships. Ketu's in the ninth house, so unusual events related to enterprise, father, authority, so that's pretty similar to the main chart. Then the Drake in a D3 for siblings. So we would assume this would be an important chart, and it is because it's a Virgo to malignant. It's the same rising sign as the main chart, which is Virgo. So that in and of itself tells you that this is an important issue in somebody's life. Siblings, which again with the pravraja in the third house, that's not surprising. So K2 is not well placed, but it is Swa in the eighth house. So that's going to bring unusual long-term changes and endings, but some protection with that. Saturn and Mars in the seventh house. So again, structural changes to relationships, independent business and self. So similar to the main. I mean, this chart's very similar to the main chart. I mean, Sun, Moon, Mercury in the third house, Jupiter in the 11th house, Saturn in the seventh house. It's very similar. Which again, because there's so much energy in the third house for, again, if this is a person, and what we'll see as we'll watch as we go through these, it's like so many of these charts are basically the same. Every single chart has Sun, Moon, and Mercury together because they're all in the same degree. They're so close together you can't split them up, really. Even though you try to slice and dice the chart up to get these sub zodiacs. So the Sun, Moon, Mercury. I mean, this is like a leader of public friends. Again, community organizer. And so whatever's going in the main chart, you're going to see in multiplicity through every aspect of somebody's life. And that's part of the problem. This person doesn't really get time or place to rest and relax and pull back from all this community organizing. It's important to them, but again, I think ultimately to their detriment, which we'll see is especially when we get into the health amshas for this chart. So anyway, Venus and Rahu in the third house, unusual changes and endings, especially with relationships potentially. K2's in the ninth house. Oh, I was moved on to Drake and Edgar. Okay, so we talked about Virgo to malignant, important chart. K2's not well placed, Saturn, Mars. Venus is in the 10th house, so practical leader, advisor, wearing multiple hats. The reason why is that Venus is the lord of the ninth house of enterprise, and Venus is in a dual sign of Gemini. So again, and this is the ruling sign here is a Virgo, so dual earth sign. So yeah, so unusual long-term changes, endings, but some protection. 5 planets are the same as the natal chart. Again, the third house is a big deal, which isn't surprising given the pravraja yoga in the first natal chart. Then on this slide, we have the D7 for children and the D12 for parents, grandparents. So again, not surprisingly, the kids chart is not super great. I mean, Saturn and Venus are not well placed, so that's not going to be super desirable. Venus at least is exalted, so that'll soothe the blow or cushion the blow. Saturn and Mars are in the 6th house, so again, structural issues, physical injuries, that sort of thing. Venus is exalted in the 12th house. So this might be somebody who's like convalescing. Again, it seemed like the kids were having some sort of physical thing, especially related to like their arm or hand or something. So maybe the kids, taking a little vacay, so to speak, or convalescing time, soothing their wounds, I guess. Then the Dwadash D12 for parents, grandparents. Well, Saturn's not well placed, so issues with home, children. Venus was with an exalted Jupiter. I mean, that's pretty nice, actually. I mean, Jupiter's exalted retrograde. These are the two great benefics together, which is usually like a sunshine and unicorns type of energy. And I think generally speaking, it would be here. But the thing is, Jupiter and Venus, when you do Amsha analysis, are considered to be soul enemies. So there can be problems here as well. But it seems like the parents and grandparents are very supportive, practical, and spiritual advisor type people. The SWA K2 in the 7th house, this might indicate that they're immigrants. Parents are immigrants or grandparents are immigrants. Recent immigrants of family. So then on this slide, we have the D10 for career and reputation and D11 for public support and income. So you would expect from the chart, before we even dive into this, you would expect that these two, so D10 career and reputation, there's probably some challenges there you would expect. And the D11 you would expect to be very strong. So let's see. Okay. So Saturn and Venus not well placed. Okay, so there are challenges. Saturn's, in the 6th house of acute structural issues, and also related to mind and enterprise, so this is like all the stress related to trying to keep things up. Venus is still in the 12th house, so there's some protection from physical losses. This could be taking a vacation. potentially, or at least a break, which would be nice because I think the person needs it. But I think it's more protection from physical losses. Because again, we were seeing that in the main chart that like the eighth house, 11th house, second house, they're all basically protected. And those are all money houses. So, and then K2 in the ninth house, unusual changes, stress, even obsession, because not only is K2 in the ninth house, but you have Sun, Moon, Mercury aspecting K2 in the ninth house. This is like an obsessive energy here, dealing with stress of, unusual changes and, some sort of community enterprise, the whole 5-3-9 axis here. This is somebody who's like, it doesn't sleep because of all this community organizing stuff and being like the, local hero and living up to that image, both personally and professionally, probably. I mean, that's a lot. Probably the person, people don't even see them as human anymore, you know, you know. So, yeah, it's a lot. Some people like that and some people get burnt out by it. So to each their own. So then the D11, we would expect this to be strong. So we have 3 planets in the Lugna, so we know this is an important chart. Public support and income. Venus is not well placed, and it's the Lord of the 8th house. So there's long-term issues, thinking community. Saturn's debilitated, but Bunga in the 2nd house with Jupiter and Mars. So this is announcing, again, structural changes of property and assets. And then we've got in the 7th house of partnerships and independent business, we have Rahu, Ketu, Sun, Moon, Mercury. Obsessive, unusual path, partnership, self-protection. I mean, it's all right here. And there's going to be some strain because Saturn is debilitated, even though it's in a positive house. Venus is in a negative house. At least, again, Saturn's bunga, because Mars is aspecting its own sign and, kind of ameliorating the debilitation there. But, yeah, this doesn't seem easy breezy to me. Let's put it that way. A lot of support, though. I mean, it's all about, look at all these planets, and the 3 in the Lugna here and 5 in the partnerships and independent business. And it's strong because Mercury is going to be swa there in Virgo in the 7th house. So, yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised it's strong D11 considering the main chart. Then here we have D4 for assets, which is Virgodima, again, an important chart, which again isn't surprising. And Damsha D4 for 24 for education, which again, I said there were probably going to be some issues. And yeah, so let's see. D4 here, Virgodima. Okay, so look at this. Sun, Moon, Venus, Sun, Moon, Mercury in the 3rd house again, aspected by Mars. So again, we have Sun, Moon, Mercury, Mars on the 3-9 axis, just like in the main chart. Saturn is in the 7th house, just like in the main chart. Jupiter's in the 11th house, just like the main chart. And then we have Rahu and Ketu on the 6-12 axis here. So only Venus is really in a different position. This is almost the exact same chart. And again, this is about assets, physical, tangible assets for the most part. It can also be large portfolios. So again, I was seeing all this money in the main chart. So whatever this is, like, again, maybe it's building some community, not just having a community network, but a community center almost that somebody's building. And that's why all the money's involved. Because, just some, hey, let's drink some apple juice down on the corner. That's not going to take a lot of money, but if you're, building a whole new building or taking one over and, and you need that kind of level money, that's what we're talking about here. Like, again, more of a community center type. So Virgodima, so assets are important. K2's not well placed, unusual acute issues. Saturn's in the 7th house. Again, delays, obstacles, partners, physical changes, anxiety. Venus is with an exalted Jupiter in the 11th house of clubs, group, society, and income. So public support and money to back it up. Yeehaw, so again, success, but I would be worried about the person. I'm not worried about the project, but I'd be worried about the person from this kind of chart. It's just somebody who's just taking on way too much, I think, beyond what's even mildly reasonable. Then the Sadamsha D24. So KT is not well placed. Unusual changes or endings. Saturn plus an exalted Jupiter. It's going to be difficulties at home, partners, losses, but with some grace, property law. That might be the real education is property law. Maybe not formally, but what they're having to learn to maybe build this bigger community center or, get the financing for it. Then Venus is in the fifth house of practical advice. Well, Venus is a practical advisor in the fifth house of advice. So it looks like maybe somebody is looking for practical advice related to property law. And again, maintaining the whole community situation here. Um, yeah. So more than like a formal education, it's more of like a, life learning situation. Yeah. Then here we have the health amsha. So D6 for acute issues, D8 for chronic issues, and then D27 for strength and resilience. Well, let's take a look. You can see that these are important though. So in the top amsha, D6, we have 5 planets. That makes it important. In second amsha, D8, we have Virgo rising, Virgodama lagna, so that's important. And then the third one here, D27, all of the planets in this chart, and this is very rare, all of these planets in the chart are all in negative houses. And this is the strength and resilience chart. I mean, I don't even know if I need to get into more detail, but clearly there's stress and strain going on for this person, which I was already worried about. And then it's like even sort of worse. The picture's even sort of worse when I look, deeper here. But I'll just mention these since I have the notes here. So the D6 at the top, all grahas are well placed. 5 planets are in the lugna, important. Exalted Saturn, the Sun, Moon, Mercury, Jupiter. This leadership, community leadership, is going to be a roller coaster, and there's going to be endurance here. Okay, related to this. Venus and K2 are with Rahu in the 11th. This is going to be unusual obsessive kind of advisor to groups. Again, this person's already like to their neck in like group organization stuff. And then Mars is exalted in the 10th house, so protecting land, property, home. Again, that's not surprising. D8, Virgodama lagna, important chart. Saturn's not well placed in the 12th. Exhaustion. Yeah, depletion. That's what I see there. Venus is Swa in the second house. Maintaining inner circle, face, enterprise. So the thing is, the problem here is that this person's going to look like they're fine. Except maybe that Saturn is going to, people might say, oh, you've lost a couple pounds or you look a little tired. But with this Venus in the second house, they're not going to look as tired as they actually are. And that's the problem. And that's the other thing is that them doing so much, everybody's, benefiting, everybody's grateful, blah, blah, blah. But like, I would just be like worried this person's going to burn out, crash out, whatever, it's just too much for anybody, I think. Venus, Swan, the second, okay. And then the K2 Rahu in the 9th house, obsessing about the enterprise organization again. That keeps coming up. Then the D20, all the planets are in negative houses in the D27. I mean, this will take its toll. Saturn is Swan, the 3rd house, changes or endings to physical things. Venus in the 8th house, again, more changes and endings to relationships. K2 in the 12th house, unusual losses, again, checking out in whatever way, too much, social media or video games or beer or drugs or drinking or whatever, checking out here. Swa, Mars, in the 6th house here, this is like pretty amazing. Swa, Mars, exalted Sun plus Rahu, Moon, Mercury, obsessed with handling problems. Like, this is what's going to like tank this person essentially. So I'd be worried about them. Despite all the great things that they do and everything, the community probably owes them. It's like, whoa, this is just way too much. And then here we have spirituality and worship. So the D5 at the top for innate spirituality, ethics, morals, and then the D20 for formal worship. So, and the D5, all grahas are well placed of the dasha period planets. Yeah. You can see here Saturn plus Swa, Mars in the 7th house. This is structuring, relationship, partners, independent business, very much like the main chart. And Venus is in the 9th house with Saturn and Jupiter. So this is going to be loyalty, structure, advice, religion, but again, some sort of lack of grace for all this effort that somebody's putting out. And then the K2s here is again with Moon, Mercury, Sun on the 5-11 axis, obsessively worrying about advising groups of people. That's what we got going on still, like even at this level. And we've seen that not just in the main chart, but you can see in almost every subchart too. You're getting the same kind of energy, which is no bueno for the main person here. Then we have Vimshamsha D20 for formal worship. So all the grahas are well placed. Saturn plus Sun, Moon, Mercury on the 5-11 axis again, leading, advising, community. So the thing is, like, despite all the, drain and personal loss, frankly, that this person is experiencing, part of the reason why they're doing so much of this community organization stuff is that that's part of their way of, worshiping, some higher level being or entity. So, yeah, but like at what, cost themselves. Then the Venus is in 10th house, so again, practical advisor, K2's in the 4th house, disturbance of home, property, happiness. So again, there's an obsessive energy going on here, and it's they do it because they feel like, I guess that's the duty or something like that. So again, there's success here, but again, I would be wondering for somebody like this if they're identifying too much with whatever role that they originally chose, or people kind of put them in by default or whatever, and then is it sustainable? I would wonder about those things. And actually, it kind of reminded me of this video I created for my other YouTube channel, Nature Source Care, where I talked about different Bach flower remedies, which are types of homeopathy. And specifically, I have a video about elm, hornbeam, oak, and olive Bach flower remedies, which are all for exhaustion, but different types of exhaustion. And actually, it seems like almost any one of them might be helpful for somebody like this. So like elm is for people who identify too much with their role and they kind of forget about their personal needs. And then oak and hornbeam is for people who do too much mental work, which could definitely be this person. And then oak is for people who have like kind of their eyes on the prize, but like almost exclusively, like there's no bending, there's no flexibility, there's no revising of timelines, there's no like rethinking, like, is this even a goal I still want to go for or whatever. That's oak. And then olive is just for people who are just chronically overworking and they're just, you know, depleted. So it seems like almost any or all of those remedies might be helpful for a person like this. Um, yeah. So anyway, so again, success, but at some personal cost, it looks like. So as always, thanks so much for stopping by, listening to one of my talks. All of my teaching videos on the subject of, sorry, wait a minute, let me slow down here. All of my teaching videos are in my concepts playlist. They can be found there. For more famous charts, you can watch my birth charts archive list 2025 video where I list most of the famous charts, almost all the famous charts I've analyzed on the channel and the videos you can find them in. I do offer individual birth chart readings, and then again, I'm offering that intro level 1 astrology class in January on Wednesday evenings, Eastern Standard Time. So if you're interested in personal birth chart readings or astrology classes, you can email heartledastro@yahoo.com, because again, the deadline for application is January 7th. And then I do have another YouTube channel, Natural Medicine, where I talk about Ayurveda, traditional Indian medicine, as well as yoga, homeopathy, and naturopathic medicine. And the name of that channel is Nature Source Care, so that's out there too for you. All right, so again, thanks so much for all your support that you give me and the channel. All the likes and subscribes and shares and donations people send in, and the chit chat, banter stuff we get into in the comments. Thank you all so much for that. I'm glad to know that you guys are enjoying the videos and learning Vedic astrology, so that's super cool. And as always, I hope you found these talks and this talk helpful, useful, and interesting to you as you learn to navigate the energy cycles of your own life. All right, so until the next one, take good care. Namaste.